Hey everyone, welcome to Judging for the Win. I'm Dave, and this is my daily ruling. Today's question was suggested by a viewer. Thanks to Ness and Annie for this one. Amy plays Mouth of the Storm, giving all Nick's creatures -3/-0. On Nick's turn, he plays a Goblin Chariot and attacks with it. Is Goblin Chariot affected by the Mouth of the Storm's debuff? Okay, so before we get started, I want to go over the definitions for a couple of official game terms which I'll be using, just to get everyone on the same page. A lot of the time I kind of gloss over this, but I think it's especially important for today's question because the answer depends on understanding exactly how the game rules apply to different types of continuous effects. A continuous effect is something that modifies the characteristics of objects, modifies control of objects, or affects the players or rules of the game for a fixed or indefinite period. Continuous effects can come from static abilities on a game object, such as what we see on Kardur the Spiteful. They can also get set up when a spell or ability resolves, for example something like this charge, or the triggered ability of Mouth of the Storm from the original problem statement. Continuous effects from static abilities are easy. They always apply to whatever their text indicates, and the set of objects that they apply to is continuously updated. If I play a new creature after Kardur enters the battlefield, the new creature will also be getting -1/-1. Continuous effects that result from a resolving spell or ability don't work like this. Charge determines the set of game objects that will get +1/+1 at the time it resolves. After this point, that set will not change. For example, if you play a new creature, or if some non-creature permanent you control becomes a creature, or if control of a creature changes. This answers the question from the original problem statement, since Mouth of the Storm's debuff is subject to the same rule. Let's closely read what that rule says though, because there's a little bit of a complication that might trip some people up if they encounter a similar situation. Only continuous effects that change the controller or the characteristics of a game object lock in the set of things that they affect when they resolve. Continuous effects that change the rules of the game update what they affect, just like continuous effects from static abilities. So that means if Amy played a Kardur Doomscourge in the situation from the original problem statement, Nick's Goblin Chariot would have to attack, even though it was not in play when the Kardur's ability resolved. I think the logic behind this discrepancy is that spells and activated and triggered abilities are meant to affect the game one time when they resolve. Changing what they do after that point goes against that spirit. On the other hand, if the thing the spell does is change the rules of the game rules apply all the time, so it's okay for effects that do that to get updated. Let's close out with a few challenge questions to test your understanding. Amy plays Battle Frenzy, and after that resolves, she plays a spell that changes the color of one of her creatures from red to green. Does that affect the size of the buff? What about if Amy animates a manland after the spell resolves? And the answer is no. Battle Frenzy locks in the set of creatures it affects at the time of its resolution. Changing colors after that point will not change the size of the buff. Changing whether something is a creature, or who controls it, or anything like that will also not affect whether something gets a buff. Next up, Amy plays a Narset Enlightened Exile, and then a Lightning Bolt, and after that, a Grizzly Bears. Does the Grizzly Bears get +1/+1 because of Prowess? And here the answer is no. The Grizzly Bears creature will have Prowess even though it entered after Narset, because Narset's continuous effect that gives it Prowess comes from Narset's static ability, not from a resolving spell or ability. Therefore, all of Amy's creatures have Prowess regardless of whether they entered the battlefield before or after Narset, and regardless of when they became creatures. On the other hand, Prowess giving +1/+1 happens as a result of a triggered ability resolving. Grizzly Bears was not in play when Amy cast Lightning Bolt, meaning there is no Prowess trigger that wants to give Grizzly Bears +1/+1. What if Amy played Gold Knight Commander, and then a Grizzly Bears, and then another Grizzly Bears? Well, in that case, each Grizzly Bears would get Gold Knight Commander's ability to trigger. The first Grizzly Bears would be in the set of creatures affected by the continuous effect that triggered ability sets up both times, but the other Grizzly Bears would not be included in the first set, only the second. Accordingly, Amy would have a 4/4 Gold Knight Commander, a 4/4 Bear, and a 3/3 Bear. Okay, what if Amy plays a Seismic Elemental and then attacks? If Nick flashes in an Ashcoat Bear, could he block with it? And the answer is he cannot. Although the relevant continuous effect here results from Seismic Elemental's triggered ability resolving, this continuous effect changes the rules of the game, not the characteristics or controller of any objects. Accordingly, when Nick is trying to declare a set of blockers, he will be restricted from choosing any of his non-flying creatures. Finally, let's say Amy plays an overloaded Teleportal, and then plays a Threaten against Nick's creature. Will that creature get +1/+0? Can it be blocked? Well, Teleportal sets up one continuous effect as it resolves, but the two parts of this effect are subject to different rules. The set of creatures that gets +1/+0 is locked in as Teleportal resolves, but the set of creatures that can't be blocked is not. For a similar reason, if you want to get full value out of Teleportal, make sure you animate your manlands before you overload it. If you'd like some more practice with this topic, I talked about a similar question in my episode about Elspeth Undaunted Hero versus Elspeth Sun's Champion. As a fun historical note, when Indestructible debuted in Darksteel, it was not a proper keyword. Cards just used it as an adjective with its normal English meaning. Now that means that effects that granted Indestructible were classed as effects that changed the rules of the game. When Indestructible was made into a keyword in M14, that caused some rulings to change because effects that granted Indestructible were now giving an ability to the affected permanent, which counts as changing its characteristics. From time to time, I see people suggest that Can't Be Blocked should be keyworded. If WotC ever did so, that would change some rules due to this same phenomenon. Pretty interesting, right? I talked with Carl from Card Market about another consequence of this change in my video about Jailbreak Scheme and Dress Down, so check that out if you'd like some more. That's all I have for you today. How did you do? Join me again next time for another daily ruling. Until then, I hope you have a great day.